Hello, welcome to another episode of Mega Manga Monday. I am Jason Hahn, and today we're talking about My Hero Academia. We've got some really good episodes from the newest season, which I believe it's season 6. We're about 3 episodes deep into the new season, but we're going to probably talk about that for a little bit, and then we're going to talk about the newest chapter of the My Hero Academia manga, which is chapter 370. I am Jason Hahn, and I'm a writer for ScreenRant.com. I happen to write a lot of video game related stuff, but I'm a huge manga fan, so I started Mega Manga Monday to talk about the series that we love and the new chapters and episodes. And it's a great time for manga and anime fans. I could gab about it by myself for a while, but I've got some buddies with me to talk about new My Hero Academia stuff. Steven, how you doing, man?
Hey, yeah, I'm doing well. My name is Steven, writer for the Screen Rant's comics slash manga slash anime category. Good time to be anime and manga fan, I gotta say. Good times.
I already said that. Ah, geez, Steven. Uh, Ben, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, it's good time to be an anime and manga fan. Let me tell you that. Uh, but I'm Ben. I'm another writer for Screen Rant for the comics, manga, and anime sections. And, My Hero's always fun to talk about, so I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, we have so much to talk about. The anime is covering some really fun stuff. Some of my favorite parts of the whole story. So we also got our resident My Hero Academia expert with us. How are you doing, Carlisle?
Hey, Carlisle. I'm another writer at Screen Rant in the anime manga section. I have mostly written about One Punch and My Hero Academia and Dragon Ball Super. So this is right here in my wheelhouse, I suppose. So I'm ready to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I said, we'll probably start off with the anime. So any manga or anybody who's not caught up on the manga can listen to this good chunk about the anime for a while. And I'll go ahead and throw in the description the timestamp on when we start talking about the manga. So if you are the opposite and only reading the manga and don't care about the anime, feel free to jump ahead if you'd like. You know what? You go ahead and do whatever you want. You're free to do it. It's your free podcast to enjoy. So I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I am going to tell all these fine guests here that I'm loving the current season of My Hero Academia. Season 5 was the last one. I think kind of pushed a lot of people away. It just honestly wasn't the most exciting part of the whole story. I heard the anime kind of did some of the parts people were looking forward to, a little too censored, mostly the My Villain Academia sort of stuff. But I've been really enjoying this adaptation of this first part of, I don't know, do we call it like the war arc essentially? We don't want to spoil that too much right now until we get into the manga, but just the whole like Twice and Hawks dynamic, the anime's interpretation of it, especially like the Japanese voice acting on Twice's part, like it just cut to the core of me like a feather. It was really intense, and I really enjoyed it. Also getting to see like Twice and Toga have like, I'd say, a more impactful moment than the manga even gave them. Because
Wait, what?
yeah, if you haven't watched the newest episodes, man, Twice like saves Toga and Mr. Compress from getting captured, and it's like the last thing he's able to do before Hawks cuts him down.
Doesn't that
No,
happen
that
in
wasn't the
manga as
manga.
well?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
wasn't the manga.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, the anime, of course, is gonna like kind of flesh that out, and
Oh,
just with the music and the voice acting, and um, that just they flashed back to certain stuff, and it just hit really hard. I loved it, and just hungry for more Toga stuff, of course.
oh yeah.
Yeah, Toga's one of the more interesting villains, and but I had a really big soft spot for Twice. And it's
Yeah,
just
I mean,
kind of like a big death in the series. We don't get that.
yeah, I thought they pulled off the Twice episode very well. I will say, however, I think they sort of used the emotional resonance of the moment to sort of like cut out on the animation budget for that episode. Because I don't think that episode was super well animated. I thought it was very good, and I think it was smart of them to do that. But like compared to the other episode of the season, I think that was actually the worst animated.
Oh
But
yeah.
it was
we,
still
we used our budget on Mirko.
exactly, especially episode 4. Like, oh, that was
I
pretty great.
I have a question because I haven't watched the anime yet. Like I've just been doing other things. Sorry. But cause I just remember that in the manga, when they were introducing the whole Twice story, they did like they really hammered it home that this was kind of like they even used the same language, from Batman. It's like just one bad day type of deal. And did they do that in the anime? Because I just remember it being like Horikoshi was like really like, this is the story of Joker, but it's in My Hero Academia land.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
just curious. Did they do that in the anime at all? Or?
At least not in this current season. I think that they did do that during the My Villain Academia arc.
Okay.
But
They
I could
hammered
be wrong.
they hammered home that like if things had been different, maybe Twice would have been better because Twice isn't a bad guy.
Right.
It's just he's a very loyal person, and his friends happen to be bad guys, but like or not bad guys, but like villains, right? His friends happen to be villains. So they did emphasize that, but I don't think that they used the whole like one bad day sort of thing.
Oh, that's a shame. I just remember, I remember that really hammering home. I was like, oh crap, Joker.
Yeah, you did make me realize that Twice is basically a mix of like Joker, Two-Face, and Clayface. 3 Batman villains just mashed into one, kind of, which is kind of fun to see.
Funny because this arc
You can
also
say.
features Rikia, what's his name, the former head of Detnarat, who was also the league, was leading the Paranormal Liberation Front. He's also very clearly visually based on the Joker. Like his design looks very much like the Mark Hamill Joker.
Oh, the Destro?
Yeah, Redestro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's played by Krillin in the American or English.
Oh no.
And he's
way.
played by Sanji in the Japanese.
That's right.
Oh man, my ears didn't pick up on that. That's awesome. Well, yeah, in the newest episode, he kind of got his moment to shine too, and that was kind of actually one moment that I was a little disappointed in because I just remember like it feeling so brutal in the manga when Takeyomi's Dark Shadow like Ragnarok move just like destroys an entire hallway, and he tries to Hulk it out, and his like leg supports just shatter. And
Yeah, that happened in the anime too.
yeah. And it just, I think the manga version of it just made it feel so much more brutal. I felt because I'm kind of dumb. I totally forgot that he had like lost his legs in the fight against Shigaraki. So reading it in the manga, it looked like his legs just broke clean off again. And I had forgotten about it, so I was just like, "Oh my god, Takeyomi just de-legged this man."
Oh, see, I actually think it was good in the anime because I was watching it with like anime only watchers,
Yeah.
and they were confused. They were like, "I thought Redestro had his legs cut off. Why does he have legs now?" So when the machinery clearly broke, they're like, "Oh, okay, it's artificial legs. I
Yeah.
got it."
Yeah.
So I actually feel like it was good that the anime did it that way because it would have been
We also
confusing
had-
if it didn't.
That Twice clone of him running around too, who obviously had totally fine legs. So that definitely doesn't help with the confusion.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, Jason, just so you don't feel bad about that, and I won't give any spoilers, but like remember how slow I was in figuring out what happened in the crazy cliffhanger in Berserk, like right
Yeah.
before that moment, I went completely over my head. So I think you're fine.
Okay, I feel better. Thank you.
I mean, that's why we have this podcast, right? Because these series are filled with so many details that, you can't catch them all, right? So
heck no.
we need to discuss them all here, so that way we can figure them out. And stuff.
Ooh, that's a good tagline. Gotta discuss it all. Gotta discuss it all. Gotta discuss it
Oh
all.
yeah.
Gotta discuss it all.
And yet we don't discuss Pokemon.
I does that even have like an active manga going?
It has
Uh,
entirely too many.
Yeah, I was gonna
Well,
say.
And what's great though that Screen Rant has expanded in the anime is that now we're able to write about Pokemon because I know like before when we were just doing manga, like anything Pokemon related to manga didn't do well. But
Oh wow.
so it's great that and I've been seeing you doing pitches on Pokemon, so that's always great because I've always wanted to write about Pokemon too, but it's like we can't write about the manga because no one's clicking on them. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to be throwing links to everyone's Screen Rant articles in the description. So if you want to read about some cool Pokemon stuff, go ahead and check out those links. But yeah, back to the episode. Like, I really enjoyed. I don't know, Ben. You said something about the animation not being quite up to par with that Twice episode.
in episode 3, and
Yeah.
in the one where Twice dies.
Right. Yeah, and that one, I don't know. I really enjoyed like seeing him kind of trying to consistently like make doubles of himself, but Hawks has just got like an orb of feathers just cutting them all up, and just like
Yeah,
thinking
but if
from
you,
like
I mean, if you look at like the frames on it, right? Like
Oh,
it
sure.
wasn't it was like if you compared episode 3 to episode 4,
Mhm.
episode 4 clearly they put a lot more budget into animating the fights, and same with like episodes 1 and 2 with like the Mirko moments, right? They put a lot of budget into that. Like those fights were super smooth and the animation was done really well. And I'm not saying that, the moments weren't good in episode 3 because I think the anime really delivered on those moments. But just in terms of like animation budget, I don't think that they really put a ton into episode 3.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of very like sort of like animation tricks that were used in episode 3 to like make it seem more seamless or use less frames. So,
Okay.
and then the whole moment with Hawks coming out of the fire to kill Twice too was just complete one picture just moving up the picture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they actually cut away from it. Like it just cut to like the blood dripping off of the balcony and Twice just laying there. But
Yeah,
you
and I think
kinda-
it worked. I'm not saying it didn't work.
Mhm.
I think the anime did that really well, but also at the same time, it's you look at that and you're like, okay, so they took the budget away from the animation here to put it into other things.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, there's a lot to cover in this arc, so I'm not too worried about it. It didn't bug me. I definitely enjoyed it.
No, yeah, I'm not saying it, but I'm just saying it was funny to see that in like one of the biggest moments of the series that they didn't really animate it well.
Right.
They just did everything else about it well, and so the moment still worked.
I gotta say is that you're getting me really interested in wanting to just see how this art actually played out because it's like, whoa, it sounds like
It's great.
wasn't-
It is.
Yeah,
It's very enjoyable.
I definitely recommend watching it. Like, I think it's done a great job with the arc so far.
Well, you know what part I'm waiting for when that eventually comes. So that's probably when I'll really start delving into it once we get to that point, which hasn't come yet.
Yeah, and I'm actually really surprised by the pacing because the latest episode ended with Shigaraki getting zapped awake, essentially. And then literally the episode ends right there, which I loved. It's a great cliffhanger. But one thing that kind of bugged me, and I could be wrong on this, I hope you guys can correct me on it if I am. But before Shigaraki wakes up, he starts having like his dream where he's like floating above a city of hands, and the hands are like trying to grab him and they're disintegrating around him, and he has like the moment with his family, like flashbacks, and him just kind of accepting like you guys just kept on like not accepting me, everyone just wouldn't accept me. And I thought that was a little later on. I thought that was well, I thought that was a later on in this arc. But was that all when that happened? I just remember when that happened in the manga. I was just like, oh man, this is where like Horikoshi saying, I hear a lot of people have trouble drawing hands. Well, I'm just gonna do a whole chapter of just drawing hands.
I thought that happened at the right time, but I don't know. I could be
They
wrong.
have moved some stuff around. I don't know about that in particular, but sometimes they do move things around for pacing purposes or for the purposes of having a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but I don't know about that particular scene for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could have sworn that happened at the right time because there was no real time after that to include it.
Yeah, you might be right. But I thought they handled it pretty well. And just it kind of drives home like the whole like way Horikoshi built up like the Twice character is like, yeah, he's a bad guy, but he's actually got a good heart and he's not like a bad guy, but he is working with the bad guys. So when he did die and the betrayal of Hawks and especially just seeing like Twice breaking down like, oh man, I previously let Overhaul into the club and he killed my friend and took off Mr. Compress's arm. That was all my fault for bringing him there. And I leaked it all to Hawks, so this is again all my fault. And just like hearing him breaking down, like I'm gonna have to look up that voice actor's name because he did such a great job. But just yeah, it hit really well. I really enjoyed it. It's definitely one of those moments that when people were like, "Oh, I'm not really into My Hero Academia anymore," it's like, "Oh man, well this next arc coming up's got some really good stuff," and they delivered on that for me. And it just kind of makes me a little bit more disappointed with like where the manga is currently. We'll be transitioning to that in a little bit. It just we know Horikoshi has the ability to like write these sort of dramatic relationships, and I kind of really wish that we like felt it to that level with some of the end game stuff that's going on, just because he did that so well. Like, and yeah, I don't know if there's anything else about the anime episodes you guys wanted to bring up, but yeah, the Mirako stuff was also really cool. But I'll probably bring up the character writing for the villains as we transition into the manga discussion. But yeah, anything else about the anime? I thought the Mirako stuff was really good. The Nomus are legitimately more scary than I feel like I ever felt that they were in the manga. In this section, especially like getting to hear the inner monologues of the Nomu as they're like figuring out tactics and breaking down people's quirks, and they're just like expressing that they're just so happy to be able to like think for themselves. And I think that was in the manga, but it's just the anime's kind of re-bringing this all up for me, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I think that is particularly relevant to considering some of the things that are going on right now, to have that in the anime as a contrast point. I think that really helps, and it definitely did kind of drive home how dangerous they are in a way that we haven't seen in a while in the manga.
Yeah, especially with just the like introduction of the first Nomu that All Might had to fight, and just the progression of these Nomu, and instead of it just being a bunch of generic Nomu with powers, it's just like, oh, let's give them at least a little bit of a personality and make them as scary as the other ones, or even more so with the regeneration and all that stuff. But just seeing Mirako like getting impaled and still going for it, and man, they did a great job with Mirako's whole scene, and I of course excited to see more of that. But I don't know, just Endeavor doesn't do it for me, guys. He's the number one hero, but he should just be able to just tear through everything, and he just seems to hit every roadblock possible. And another moment that the anime really I thought did a great job on too is Dabi. Dabi interrupting on Hawks, and they do the whole thing where Dabi knows Hawks' real name, so he's just like, "Who are you?" And then the mouth moves, but we don't hear it, and you just see Hawks' reaction. We all know what he says, and we'll probably find out at the end of this anime season. Maybe even before. I would love it if this anime season is able to tell this whole like war fight, and then if we get a little bit after that too, because a little bit after is good.
We find out like in the this is kind of an anime spoiler, I guess. I think we'll get to Dabi's name in this season.
Yes.
I'll say. I won't say when it happens or how, but But it's part of the war arc, right? It's not
Yeah.
after the war arc. So
Yeah, it's like one of the
um,
last big things that I think happens in the
yeah,
war arc.
so
So
yeah. But
it,
I will say with the Dobby thing, I think that seeing the voice acting on that moment where he's like, you know, he's about to kill Hawks and yeah, Hawks is like, you don't seem too upset for someone whose friend just died. I think seeing the voice acting on that moment made it a bit different for me because in the manga I just sort of felt like he was like laughing, like he was just clearly, happy that Twice had died and stuff like that. But I think the anime added a bit more nuance to the
hmm
delivering that line. Uh, so props to the Dobby voice actor as well.
Well, yeah, and the direction too, just because they like he of course delivers that line, and Dobby's just like, "Oh man, you're making fun of my disability. I don't have tear ducts, but I am very upset right now. I am very sad because Twice was going to be pivotal to my big plan." That he's just pretty much saying like, "Yeah, I've been using Shigaraki and all of them for my own means. I have my own evil plan. Who are you?" Beep, and then we move on. But yeah, that was me gabbing about the anime episodes for a while. Well, we'll go ahead and start moving into the manga. We're on chapter 370 of My Hero Academia, and to kind of go back into one little thing we're talking about, the anime is currently covering some really interesting stuff. The death of Twice, Dobby's possible reveal. He mouths the words, but we don't get to hear it, and Hawks reacts. Really hoping the anime ends with Dobby's identity reveal. Well, actually, I'm hoping it doesn't end with that. I'm hoping that's maybe the middle of this season. I'm hoping the first half of this season, because they like to break it up into two bigger seasons, is this war arc, and then I'm hoping we go into Dark Deku. I'm really hoping we
No,
see.
I don't think the pacing works out for that.
You don't think so?
No, I
So
don't think they
Yeah.
can.
I think they're doing a
Yeah.
really good job with it so far. I mean, the last episode
Yeah, and I
ended
think
with Shigaraki waking up, and I was just like, oh man, I feel like that was like a third through the arc already.
Yeah, more like 4 episodes in. Oh, I don't know. I feel like they're just gonna spend the season doing the war. Like it. I don't think that they. I don't think that's in service to the series to rush through the war and get to Dark Deku. Um, yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I might have to
Because
do the math and see how many chapters they've adapted so far in. Is it 3 or 4 episodes? I've definitely watched the latest
4 episodes.
episode, or four. Okay, gotcha.
Um, but yeah, I think they're probably just gonna spend the whole season on the war. I mean, if they do adapt Dark Deku, that would be great because I'd like to see Lady Nagant animated.
Yes.
But yeah.
Well, we'll
But
see.
that's kind of off topic for the manga discussion.
Yeah. I was just kind of wrapping up. We didn't want to spoil anything for anime only watchers, but the anime is
Yeah.
fantastic right now, and the manga depends who you ask. Maybe a little less so. Earlier in the podcast, I was talking about how excellent I think the character writing was for Twice and his death, and how effective it was. Just even though he was a villain, having him die and pretty much die crying because he felt like he betrayed all of his friends consistently, accidentally. And it just makes me really wish like Shigaraki has had these moments, but I just don't feel like. It's just we know Horikoshi has the ability to like write this sort of nuance and dramatic tension and stuff like that. And I just don't feel like we have any of that right now. And that's just me. Last couple chapters, we've really enjoyed Deku showing up, fighting Shigaraki, getting to see Deku kind of going all out. I think that this is like peak Deku. My idea is things are gonna make a turn for the worse. He's gonna run out of steam, and tension's gonna be high. But as soon as Shigaraki was about to pull some ace out of his sleeve, we jump over to Spinner. And honestly, I thought that this chapter like did a really, really interesting thing with kind of focusing on these people that have these quirks that transform their bodies, and it kind of gets into society turning an eye to a certain class of citizen. And it's kind of, again, getting into like, well, all right, what kind of big thing do you have for this, Horikoshi? Like, you're making some pretty big statements about society here, like it's relatable to our society and racism and all that stuff. And I'm really, really curious to see that develop even further. As soon as we jumped away from Shigaraki and Deku and didn't go to Toga or any of that stuff, at first I was just like, oh man, that's kind of a bummer. But then as I was reading this, I was just like, oh man, this is actually some like really fascinating developments here. Like, it seems like a lot of civilians are like starting to possibly fight against the heroes too, because they're starting to see the cause of people being distrodden because they were born with a quirk that makes them look different. And I think it's great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the shift to a different part of the battle in this chapter, especially since this was set up earlier, like at Dabi's death. One thing that I'm less of a fan of is that it's like it's a flashback, or it's not a flashback. It's like turning back the clock a bit, to quote the manga's official English translation. I feel like I don't know. I feel like Horikoshi's just gonna cover the different section of the battle by being like, and here's a flashback to a couple minutes before, and here's what's going on in this fight at that time. And I feel like that's sort of not a cop out, but like I don't know. I think it's sort of just like, oh well, I'll just cover these different sections. I don't know. I just like it when the manga jumps to different points in the battle at the same time, right? Because I feel like it gives more of the sense of like, oh, everything's coming together and all that stuff. And I feel like having to like jump back a bit is a sign that like it's kind of like structured not the best. Like you could have covered this before Deku and Shigaraki were fighting, right? But instead we're flashing back to it, which is kind of, I don't know. I don't like it as much, but
Well,
I am happy that we're getting a new fight though, or a new part of the battle.
I'll just jump on what you're saying, because I mean it's kind of different, but I'm feeling similar. I have a similar view on it. Like, I'm normally not bothered by expositions at all. I usually feel like that they have their place in fiction when they're done very well. But I really felt that this moment should, because I mean, one, it's Spinner, someone that, like, one of the villains, and what we've been establishing is that the villains are, in my opinion, much more nuanced and intricate than the heroes are themselves. And each
Agreed.
villain whose backstory is explored should be given the time that it needs to flesh out. And I feel like this chapter basically rushed through it. Like, there was a lot of, again, I'm usually fine with expositions, but here, like, you needed to do more of the showing, not the telling. And I really feel like that minimized the moment and the impact. I mean, probably, future chapters might, fill it in more, but I was not a fan of that at all, just because, but like I said, it didn't really work out for me. And I guess also too, I was more interested in, and it's something that was said way back, I think it was chapter 330 or something like that. I did an article on it, where All For One was basically telling Spinner that he had this special job where he's basically gonna, quote unquote, spin a tale on what the League of Villains has been doing to the paranormal liberation front, to get them on their side. Like, so that was like a big part of All For One's mission for Spinner, was to have him expand his army to help Shigaraki. That was the big thing. When Shigaraki needs help, you're supposed to do this so you can help Shigaraki. And so when we brought in Spinner, that's what I was hoping to get more of. And of course, we'll get this later, but that's what I was hoping for. And then instead, we just got an exposition, and I was just sad. So
Yeah, I feel like it ties into a big complaint I have about Spinner, where I feel like Spinner's just been a token character for the majority of
No.
his existence.
Here's what I think. I think that's deliberate. And I think based
Oh.
on this chapter, we're seeing that because All for One does not actually care about the mutants at all. We all know this. He really only cares about himself. So he's getting the mutants on their side just to have more foot soldiers. He's not actually concerned about what happens to them, and he's not concerned about what happens to Spinner either. Spinner is just a convenient face to use to manipulate these people. And I would say that we know this because this quirk that he gave to Spinner seems to be the same one that Gigantomachia has, which makes you bigger, and it makes you stupid, and it makes you easy to control. And that seems to be what's going on with him right now. So I think that he has sabotaged Spinner, actually. He didn't give him an important... Well, I guess it was technically an important job, but he's definitely throwing away Spinner. He's not trying to actually make use of this at all. And it may shape up to be quite tragic, like Twice's death, because Spinner is probably the next least villainous character in the villains after Twice.
Totally agree.
He's really here for he wants to have this revolution thing, and he is very loyal to Shigaraki, but he doesn't actually care about what All for One is up to at all. So I think that's where we're going with this, and if that's the case, this could be very good.
Yeah, I just wish that Spinner had gotten a proper backstory, so that we would know that he's more than a token, right?
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. That Spinner's just the token heteromorph in the League of Villains, and All for One's like you're a convenient face to rally them behind. But like, if we don't actually get a backstory for Spinner, or like know more about him besides like, oh, he's a mutant, right?
Yeah.
Then he actually just does become that, right? He just becomes the token for us too. And
yeah, that's true.
I really think that it's just the problem that we've brought up about this series and several of our podcasts is just that there's too many characters to spend so much time with. Because I think any time that we have gotten that time to spend with Spinner, especially back in, I think it was season 3 of the anime during the summer camp, when they capture Bakugo and stuff, that's kind of your first like time getting to hear Spinner say more than a couple words. And I think just any time we've gotten that small little glimpse, Horikoshi's tried to put that in there. I don't think we'll be getting a more fleshed out flashback, but I really think that... Oh, go ahead, Ben.
I don't know. I feel like it would have been perfect to give him a flashback during the My Villain Academia arc.
Yeah.
Right? You've given all the other villains flashbacks. Why not Spinner? Right?
And I'll just say, too, I mean, just going off of what Carlisle was saying, because I really liked that reading that you had. It just, I feel like in doing that, it's actually being more of a disservice to Spinner. Because I like that idea, that All for One doesn't really care about him, and he just gave him this important mission that's really not important. But then it's ironic then if we're not focusing on him for that reason, then we're not going to feel as much. We won't feel as bad that Spinner is getting tossed aside. So it's kind of like ironic in and of itself. But what I do like, and it adds to another reading that you pointed out, Jason, a few podcasts ago. Like I remember you saying that you found that it was very intriguing how Spinner has always been against being this mutant. He's like I'm more than that, and he ends up becoming a monster in his pursuit of being less of a monster.
Yeah.
And now this latest chapter is building upon that, because like we have this moment where all these people are it's crazy ironic because all these people are cheering Spinner. Like they're like looking at him as a hero, and he's even says it. He's not even aware of it. Like that is a very great moment. So I do like that at least because it just builds off of this whole just tragic irony of what Spinner is. He doesn't want to be a monster. He's becoming a monster. He's getting the recognition he wants, but he's too dumb to understand it now. It's just it's very good
because he's like monster sized. Like
Yeah.
I mean, even those that dialogue, I'm looking at the page right now, is just saying like, I don't know what any of them are saying, but ever since All for One gave me power, head getting fuzzier,
Yeah.
and yeah, I was
Yeah.
actually just about to bring that point up too. It's just it's cruelly ironic on how the entire time and I think that's actually what when he first got into it, I think was during the summer fest or during the summer festival, not the festival, summer camp, when Bakugo gets kidnapped and
Oh yeah.
Deku has to fight Muscular. That's kind of, I think, when we first get that idea from Spinner. He's just like, people look at me and they think that I'm some sort of monster, and I'm not that. I'm actually a pretty nice guy. We're, right, best friend Shigaraki, high five, and and yeah, seeing him literally turn into this like hulking creature that all these other are they called heteromorphs? Is that what you called them?
Heteromorph. Yeah,
Hero.
heteromorph.
Heromorph?
Heteromorph.
Heteromorph. Okay, I got it right the first time. Sweet. The heteromorphs are all banding behind him and like, yeah, Spinner, prove to him that we're not all monsters. What was that, Spinner? And you're like, oh no, poor Spinner. But to kind of go back to what Ben was saying earlier of them saying like a few minutes prior, I do agree it could be, formatted better or differently. But I think the whole purpose of this is to set up either Spinner's just going to show up to help Shigaraki out, or something's going to happen here that couldn't have happened without jumping back a couple minutes previously. So I think it would be fantastic if Spinner like gets out of here to go help Shigaraki, because then that would be him kind of overcoming this monstrous thing that All for One is like kind of forcing him to do right now. If he's able to overcome that and tell that Shigaraki needs his help, then that would be kind of Spinner doing something for himself, not something for the monster, essentially. So I kind of think that that's where that's going, but just like more irony here that the two characters that we have spent probably the least amount of time on Class 1A are at the forefront here, because they're both heteromorphs as well. And I'm really sorry, but I can't remember their names. But Octolad, or
He's Shoji, and the other one is Kota, I believe.
Kota.
Oh
That's right.
yeah, I forgot that's
Yeah.
how the chapter ends. Like, oh my god.
I mean, that's a great moment, and
Yeah.
I actually really like the end with Shoji, because I feel like throughout, like, we haven't really seen him as heteromorph. We've just seen him as Shoji, this guy in the class with weird. I mean, maybe the fact that it's weird, arms and stuff, is a sign that we did see him as a heteromorph, but it never was really a part of his identity to a big degree, I think. And now we're finally seeing that it is, and he's saying like, look, I am also, I've gone through this as well, and I'm like, I'm not trying to tear everything down. So I'm curious to see how that develops.
Well, and I love like his dialogue too is almost saying like, you know what, I support what you guys are saying, and I absolutely understand where you're coming from, but unless you have like a better plan, I will not let this stand. Like him just because everyone's talking about how heroes suck, heroes don't do what they're supposed to be doing, and he's just like, well, last time when the city was getting attacked, we made it our goal to get the staff and patients out of the hospital as safe as possible. You guys are trying to attack another hospital, and what's your plan here? Are you just going to be monsters and tear stuff up? Because if you don't have a better plan, then yeah, I'm. It's almost like he's inviting them to be like, oh well, actually, this is our plan. Oh, okay, that's a pretty good plan. I'll go ahead and help out. But that they clearly don't have a good plan. They have evil plans. So he's not going to let that stand. But I just thought it was a really, really cool, powerful moment from a character that I didn't know I cared about. But it's kind of like it's instantly moved him above Mineta. That's for sure.
I mean, he was already above Mineta for me, so.
And I think
Man,
this is the first time we've seen him without his mask.
Yes.
Man, I wish, I don't know, like I mean, I didn't get that attachment at all. Like I'm still experiencing that same thing that we've been seeing with all the other members of Class 1A lately. Like something big comes along with their character, but we haven't seen or heard from them for a while, so it just seems like another random character. Like that's how I'm feeling about these last few panels. Like I don't even remember. Like I know you were just saying their names and who they are and what they're doing, but it's like I don't even remember. Like I don't know. I couldn't connect with it. Kind of frustrating.
Yeah, kind of the Ed Shot problem.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Well, I
just
mean,
like
I think the main thing with the Edge Shot problem was that there was another way it could have been done that would have been much, 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 much better. That
yeah.
we all agreed on, and we're like, damn, why couldn't this have happened instead? Um,
Yeah, it's
but
just like one of those things where it's just my hero or Horikoshi hasn't been able to flesh out like his large cast of characters, and I know like a lot of people have problems with it, but that's something that Black Clover has been able to do so well, and I wish that my hero did that because it would just benefit so much more. Because Tabata it just does an excellent job of fleshing out all of the side characters from the Black Bulls, so that when something immense happens to them, you care because you already have that immediate backstory, or it's just compelling enough that it's like, holy crap, this is actually a really big deal.
Mhm.
yeah, it's the
I don't
same
know.
thing with like other shonen mangas, like One Piece as well. Um, a lot of these series that have a lot of characters do actually manage to successfully flesh them all out. And we've gotten so much time with 1A that Horikoshi could have done it potentially, but
Yeah.
he just hasn't, which is unfortunate. But I do feel connected. I feel like um so I mentioned this kind of earlier, but I feel like because we haven't gotten a fleshed out Shoji backstory, this moment's actually more powerful because we're realizing, he's gone through the same thing that all these people in the mob have, um, and yet it's never been a big part of his. It's never motivated him to do this sort of thing. He's just been motivated to be a hero despite all that. So I think that was a powerful realization for me that made me get more connected with him.
I guess.
But
Oh no, I mean I think that that's a good point. And I guess it reminds me because my hero did it a lot better much earlier just with Hawks. I guess one of my and I guess it's going to be happening in the anime soon. I don't know if it has yet, but Hawks's whole backstory, like what really made me gravitate towards him wasn't just his whole thing with betraying twice, which was a massive thing, but it was we got his flashback, and it was basically he went through all of or not all of the same things, but just as twisted or psychologically messed up as a lot of villains have, which made them villains, and yet he didn't become a villain. And I guess maybe that's something that I would have wanted in this particular case, because seeing Hawks as the number two hero now is massive when you consider his backstory. When based on every other villain that we've heard about, he should be a villain right now, but he's not.
yeah, I think we might see Shoji's backstory soon, but because that little panel on the second to last page, the young version of him, uh, seems like we might be getting that. But I think you're right. It would have been better if it had been fleshed out a bit more. This chapter would have
Well, I
been.
do like your reading though. I do like that, like where you're saying that the fact that we don't know much about him, it just makes it that much more compelling because we're seeing all these people being who've had the same experience or similar experiences he has most likely, but he's become a completely different character. I do like that reading, um, so hopefully that'll come across later.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It would be kind of an odd time, I think, for them to like jump into a flashback there. But yeah, as I said earlier, like I just feel like definitely the difference between say like My Hero Academia and Black Clover is like in Black Clover within the second art you sort of meet all the Black Bulls, but don't spend like a huge amount of time with them, and over time they go on
Yeah.
different missions together and they build that relationship. My Hero Academia, instead of like, oh, here's this group of characters. All right, next episode, here's double the amount of characters, and every arc it just keeps on focusing on like Deku and sometimes Bakugo, instead of them like having their own little like missions together where you're building all these extra relationships. And Carla, you might be able to tell us a little bit more about it, but I know that there's two spin-off mangas, I believe, and one of them like spends more time with the heroes, right? Like
It's,
they,
Team Up Missions is one of
Yeah.
the spin-offs, and it is of dubious canonicity just because nobody can figure out when any of this should
Love
take
that.
place. But yeah, that one is about mixing up characters into interesting combinations, and so sometimes you do get some really interesting pairings there that you would definitely not have seen in the main series. And it's like, oh, this is really cool. I wish we got these guys to interact more often, but at least we get to see it at all with this spin-off.
yeah. So yeah, I definitely agree with you guys there. It could be better, especially if we had a whole arc where we spent with is it Shinji?
I don't even know.
Shinji.
It's
Shin...
Yeah, he's gonna get in a mech and fight at the behest of his
Oh
father.
no, that's yeah. See, I messed it up. Oh no. But Octo, I'm gonna call him Octo
Yeah,
Lab.
I think he's Shoji, right?
Shoji.
And,
Yeah.
I know it's the thing that anime does, and I hated it at first, but now I kind of appreciate it. Just anytime a character shows up, you get the like, oh, this is them, and this is their quirk, and you're like, oh, okay.
yeah.
I know who Araka is. I get it, but I wish that we had that in this manga sometimes. Just it would help me remember names better, but. Yeah, I mean, so as I said at the beginning of this chapter, I was just like, oh man, okay, well, I guess we're jumping over to something new. I'm really curious to see what's going on with Toga and what Shigaraki did. But the more I got into this chapter, the more I really enjoyed it, just because it feels like it's Horikoshi, tackling some big subject matter, and he's been able to do that really effectively before. And it resonates pretty well. I think. I don't know if we'll be jumping away from this into a flashback, but we'll see. What do you guys hope will happen next?
So I think, or what I'm hoping, I guess, is that there's one way that I think Spinner won't die, and I think that's if Stain shows up. And he's still out there, so it's entirely possible. But I think Stain is the only person who might be able to get through to him at this point. So if he were to reappear and kind of talk him down and get him to kind of revert back to his normal size, maybe we can reverse some of this stuff that's been happening to him, and he can kind of realize that he's being taken advantage of and maybe switch all these people over to the good guy's side. Maybe that's just hopeless wishing, but that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, we really just need a character that they sort of respect to show up and be like, "Y'all are being a bunch of monsters right now." They're like, well, "No, we're trying to prove that we're not." Oh no, are we the bad guys?
I'm the baddie.
And yeah, I would love to see it if that, because I mean this is just a whole crowd of angry people, and angry people can do some pretty crazy things. So. Yeah, I still think it just like I can see the panel in my brain, and I really want to see just like Eraser and Copy.
Eraser can't. Eraser's kind of preoccupied.
No, that's what I'm saying is it's like I wanted to jump back to the Shigaraki fight, and I just see a panel of like monstrous Spinner like on about to attack Eraser and Manoa. Like they just like I feel something behind us, and then just about to be hit by a gigantic monstrous Spinner, because they have to be disabled so that Shigaraki can go all out, because that's too cool not to show. So we need to find some way to do that. But yeah, as I said earlier, I just think it'd be great if Spinner is able to throw this responsibility away because it's not who he is, to go help Shigaraki, because that is who he is. And that would kind of be him overcoming his monster bit. So it's almost like if our class 1A heteromorph people do end up like calming Spinner down, then he's going to go save Shigaraki. So it's like, oh, you guys did a bad thing. That could end up being a lot worse for everybody.
I mean, with this whole thing at the hospital centered around Kurogiri, like, yeah, he could get there.
Oh, right, yeah.
Depends on what happens.
That's a great point. If he even can get there and just quickly teleport to Shigaraki, that'd be great too. But yeah, any other theories on where you guys hope this story will go next?
I do like that President Mike is there as well, since he has that connection to Shirakuma, who became Kurogiri, since Aizawa was kind of tied up over there at the Shigaraki fight, to at least have President Mike there to pick up this storyline that has not gotten quite enough attention here in My Hero Academia as it did in Vigilantes. I really want to see that come up and be resolved, so I'm looking forward to that too.
Excellent. Well, Ben, Steven, anything from you guys, man?
I want Toga.
I mean, I'm kind of with Steven, but I don't know. I just want Horikoshi to actually stick the landing on these things. So
of course,
I don't have the most faith in him anymore, as I've expressed on previous podcasts. But I'm just hoping that he does the right thing.
It's questionable because I mean he's hit home runs and he's also completely whiffed the ball and ran off the field and he's like, oh, I thought this is what I was supposed to do. But the kind of one other thing about this chapter too was like the dramatic hooded figure that I believe is supposed to be the character that killed Midnight unmasked himself, and he's just some weird looking dude, some
Yeah, that's a
heteromorph.
differlike part of the battle.
Oh, so it is a different character.
Yeah, no, that was done a while back, and that was like there was like Mineta and Kaminari, I think, were there. I think.
And Red Riot, that's right.
Yeah, and Red Riot, yeah.
So
we
yeah,
might get that as well at some point.
It's just Horikoshi like introducing another character. It's just like, why couldn't have been somebody that we previously had seen, or like it could feel that much more dramatic of a reveal.
Or why couldn't it have been someone we were introduced to in the war arc when we actually got to see Midnight die on page? Why couldn't that have happened instead of just being a one of the casualty list at the end?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't even know if you guys discussed it yet, and because I've always I've never been good with the names in My Hero, and I think you probably just mentioned her, but the hero who dies during the War Liberation arc, right? Where they get to the to Shigaraki when he's in the regeneration chamber thing with Dr.
The guy with the cape, X laser or something like
yeah,
that.
like someone dies there, and I remember being like, wait, they're dead? I don't. Yeah,
we didn't know anything about them to begin with,
right?
So
yeah. They literally, I think, were introduced in that arc, and they barely got a couple lines, but that's literally where the anime just left off.
Oh yeah, oh okay,
yeah. That dude is sitting right next to Shigaraki, and then the puddle that Shigaraki was sitting in got electrified, and it kickstarted his heart. So yeah, that dude's about to die and have his cape stolen.
Yeah, I didn't even remember, because I just remember reading, I'm like, well, oh, someone died? Oh, crap, I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that really sucks, too, is that information was delivered in the same cadence that Midnight's death was. And it's like, we've spent so much more time with Midnight. She is literally, the teacher of the children. We have a few characters that are legitimately, in love with her. And it was just, brushed aside. And, yeah, so it was a disservice, and that's again one of those things that was like, oh, Horikoshi, you've hit the ball so hard so many times, and you can't hit them all, I guess. But
well, it just makes you wonder, like, where's his editorial staff? Like,
Yeah.
like
Well,
what's
they
going
might just
on?
be letting him. They might just be letting him do what he wants because he's a big. He's one of the flagship writers of Jump. So.
Well, I understand that they told him basically that Japanese fans don't like villain arcs and that he had to cut the My Villain Academia short. So maybe that was also a factor here, since this was a aspect that was focusing a little bit more on the villains.
Man, it's crazy just how different. Like, wow, because apparently that's nuts. So you're saying that the readers in Japan, they don't like villain arcs?
Yeah, that's what I heard,
Wow.
and so the editors tried to discourage him from doing the My Villain Academia at all.
But
And he did it anyway. It probably wasn't as long as he wanted it to be, but and it ended up being one of the best parts. So
yeah, I thought so.
Well, for us, maybe in Japan
Yeah,
it's got
apparently.
a very different view.
well, I guess because like in Japan, they really like that. What was that? That Roboco manga?
Oh yeah, me and Roboco, and then
Yeah, like
whenever
that
a
was
Shonen
huge
Jump,
over there. It's like, how is that? What?
Well, I find it funny whenever a Shonen Jump series get canceled. In the comments, they're like, "And yet, me and Roboco is still going on."
Yeah.
Oh my-
That is a weird. I've never read any of that, but it's just like I consistently go to the Shonen Jump website to read many of the fine mangas that we talk about on the podcast, and that character is featured on the cover page way more than I'd say almost anybody else.
Yeah,
Because they deserve it. Me and Roboco, best Shonen Jump series. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that right now.
Yeah.
Well, it was a great. Like, I mean, it's a great one shot. Like, it'd be funny. Like, it's like, oh, this is great, but it's like the story's over, man. Like, how is this still going?
It ain't over till it's over.
Yeah, I guess so.
1,000 more chapters. Me and Roboco.
Yeah, me and Roboco. It was 100 more years, Roboco.
He finally gets the Roboco that he wanted. That's not like scary and kind of ultra masculine.
Well, most of us have no idea what you're talking about right now. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, I don't even know why I'm explaining it. But
yeah, unless you want to,
You just gotta read it.
Unless you want to save this for your plugs and recommendations,
no,
I think we'll
I'm going to
move
see
back.
right now so everyone reads it. No.
That's my recommendation. Me and Roboco.
Mute
You
the
gotta
mic.
read all of it.
Mute the mic.
Like this kid wants to get these like robotic maids because like they are very helpful, but at the same time they're very sensual, and this kid really wants it, but he's really poor, so he can't get it, and all of his friends make fun of him. But so then his mom finally gets one, but it's like crazy, very aggressive and not at all sexual like the other ones, and it's the struggles of having that robot rather than the actual one that he wanted.
It's also the plot of a movie my 10-year-old was obsessed with, and I couldn't stand. So...
What was the show?
It's a movie called Ron Goes Wrong, I think.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He loved it. I did not. It's it wasn't we're getting away from it. We'll talk about this off
At
camera.
times like this, it's a good reminder that Shonen Jump is for children, targeted to children.
Yeah,
Fair.
we're a bunch of grown ass children, so I get it. Yeah. I enjoyed this latest My Hero Academia. I think just going from Ron Goes Wrong to the intricacies of societal downtrodden people and stuff like that. It's just quite a range here on the My Hero Academia podcast, but very excited to see what happens next week. I think it is on break next week, but we'll be talking about the new anime episodes and the new
It's
manga.
not on break next week.
It says 4 days.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, it was on break last week, so.
Okay, maybe I was reading another one recently, but
One Piece is on break next week.
No. All right. Well, that means
listen, I would also prefer My Hero over One Piece to be on break next week, but yeah.
well, that means we'll be doing another My Hero Academia podcast next week. Thank you guys for your time. I think we'll go ahead and move into plugs and recommendations, unless you guys have any more My Hero on the mind.
That's it for me.
Awesome. Well, this has been Mega Manga Mondays discussion on My Hero Academia, Chapter 370 and episodes 3 and 4 of Season 6 of the anime. It's been a lot of fun talking. At first, I think some of us were like, we're not really sure about this new chapter, but we got plenty to talk about, and made me enjoy it even more, thanks to your guys' insight. But I am Jason Hahn, writer for ScreenRant.com. Would love it if you checked out my Screen Rant articles. I've done some game reviews lately. Was having a lot of fun with Ghostbusters, and I have another review. Hopefully, a review code waiting for me pretty soon for a certain blue hedgehog. Anxious to check that out. But yeah,
oh, man, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
That is the most excited I've heard Steven in a long time. But I also have another YouTube channel called Hansi and Friends. I like to stream on Wednesdays and Sundays. I've been playing Overwatch 2, and today, actually, we're recording this on Wednesday. This Wednesday night, I'm doing a spooky stream with my wife, actually. We're going to be playing BioShock, which is one of my favorite first-person sci-fi shooter games. Excellent story, really deep and intricate, and it's also just really creepy and fun. By the time you're listening to this, you'll be able to watch that on the channel. So check out Hansi and Friends and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Also, Mega Manga Mondays. We have our own website, megamangamondays.podbean.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at mmangamondays. We do other podcasts for series like One Piece, Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, to name a few. And if you're all caught up on those mangas, check out our discussions there. Ben, how about you, man?
Yeah, I don't really have any recent recommendations for things, so I'll just go with an old Halloween classic because the spooky season is upon us. Lock and Key is a great horror comic series written by Stephen King's son, Joe Hill. And it's really, really good. I'm not the biggest horror fan, but this series grabbed me, and it's just extremely good. So highly recommend it if that sounds up your alley. And in terms of plugs, I have a YouTube channel of my own called YGO from Zero, where I go over historical format of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. So if that sounds like it would interest you, then please check that out as well.
Excellent. How about you, Carlisle?
My usual plug is my visual novel Elven Revenue Service, which is now out of hiatus since my wedding has already taken place.
Woo! Yeah!
Yeah. So please check that out if you have any interest in visual novels or retro RPGs. But I also made myself a new personal Twitter account, which you guys can follow if you would like. This will be more for talking to anybody who might want to argue with me over my articles. This one is at Carlisle WCE, CARLYLE WCE.
Excellent. And Steven, anything from you today, man?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, hopefully it's not too loud since I'm outside, but just started watching a few anime that I'm really enjoying. The Human Crazy University, I've been following that. And it's one of those shows where I'm not able to write about it on Screen Rant just because it's pretty mature, and it's odd because it's a lot like the animation reminds me a lot of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, which is weird in anime.
Yeah.
But I am enjoying the heck out of it. I'm still watching it whenever it comes out. Finally started after like a while. Finally getting started on Golden Kamuy, which is it's been going on for a while, and I'm really glad that I am reading that. Watching it because it's really good so far. And I guess I'll just say Undead Unluck is in an awesome place in the manga right now. Really massive thing just happened. And things are good right now in manga land, and
I will say I saw the opening for the 4th season of Golden Kamui, and it greatly tempted me to start watching it.
yeah, I didn't see what you're referencing, but I was shown a few manga panels a little while ago, and I was like, this looks very intriguing, and I finally started watching it, and I would definitely recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so many anime that I'm watching this season that I'll probably have to get to it next season.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing, I think I said in the last podcast, but my my interview with the composer for the Chainsaw Man anime is up, and I'm still waiting. It's been a while, like, because I'm communicating with Crunchyroll via email, but I've sent questions to the director of the Chainsaw Man anime, and hopefully he'll get them answered so that we can put that up on the website. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm going to have links and all these plugs and recommendations in the description. So if you'd like to check any of those out, go ahead and look in there. You can also leave us any comments, send us a message on Twitter. If there's anything about My Hero Academia that you feel like we missed, or something that you think you disagreed with and want to call us stupid, feel free to reach out. But it's been a lot of fun today, guys. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see y'all
definitely.
next time.
Peace.